You ever wonder why things still feel stuck, even when you're doing all the right things? The affirmations, the vision boards, the intentions. It's like you're pressing all the correct buttons, but the door still won't open. And deep down, there's that quiet frustration, the kind that tightens your chest and whispers, "Why isn't this working?" What if I told you? It is working, just not in the way you think, because your attention, not your effort, is what's collapsing reality. Your attention is the invisible hand, the quantum spotlight that selects a version of your life and brings it into form, not by wishing, but by witnessing, not by controlling, but by attuning. And the wildest part? It's happening constantly, even without your awareness. Every moment you spend spiraling in fear, waiting for a message, worrying about the timing, obsessing over signs, you are collapsing timelines that mirror that exact frequency. You're not manifesting from desire. You're manifesting from nervous anticipation, from contraction, from fragmentation. This is the first thing most people miss. Attention is not just a thought, it's a frequency. It's embodied, it has weight, it has motion. It's the way your system orients to reality, and most of us are directing it reactively, without knowing it. Conditioned by past pain, wired for survival, we place our sacred attention on what we're afraid will happen, or what we think we need to monitor to feel safe. And the quantum field, as neutral and precise as a mirror, reflects back realities that match that vibration. Think about it. How many times have you imagined the worst-case scenario before anything even happened? Played out a conversation in your head, rehearsed the rejection, felt the sting of being overlooked days before the moment ever arrived? That's not just imagination, that's selection, that's manifestation. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's vividly felt, and so it begins preparing for a timeline you never consciously chose. The body tenses, the breath shortens, the heart beats like it's under threat, and in that state, no matter how positive your words are, your field is broadcasting survival. But it's not your fault. This is how the system was built, to protect you, to predict, to prevent pain. But protection is not the same as creation. And hypervigilance is not presence. When your attention is hijacked by fear, it fractures your coherence, it scatters your frequency, and without coherence, manifestation feels like struggle, like chasing, like waiting. That's because you're no longer magnetizing, you're managing, you're trying to hold water with clenched fists. But here's the shift. When you learn to reclaim your attention, not just mentally, but energetically, everything changes. You begin to collapse different realities, not by trying harder but by tuning deeper, by noticing the subtle pull toward panic and choosing presence instead, by feeling the urge to fix, to check, to control, and breathing through it, letting it pass. That's coherence, that's embodiment, that's alignment. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you're in coherence with, what your attention feeds, your field forms, not from effort, from essence, not with control, but with clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you pause long enough to feel what's true beneath the noise. So let me ask you now, not as theory, but as truth, where is your attention right now? What are you feeding with your awareness? Because that is the reality taking shape beneath your feet. It's easy to underestimate how powerful your attention is, because it doesn't feel like effort. It feels like nothing, like just watching, just thinking, just checking. But in the quantum field, observation is participation. You don't just see the wave collapse into a particle. Your very act of witnessing it is what makes it collapse. That means your attention doesn't just report reality. It decides it, subtly, relentlessly, silently. And most of us are giving away that power without realizing it. Scrolling through your phone, comparing your path, wondering why it's taking so long, imagining that if it hasn't happened by now, maybe it never will. Each of these moments might seem small, but they carry frequency. They send signals. And those signals aren't neutral. They're instructions. They're commands to the field saying, this is what I'm in resonance with. This is what I'm ready for. Even if that what is lack. Even if that what is fear. This is why we often feel like we're trying so hard and getting so little, because our conscious desires are being contradicted by unconscious frequencies. We say we want love, but we place our attention on being unloved. We say we want abundance, but we obsess over not having enough, and the body feels the dissonance. The nervous system contracts, and that contraction becomes the signal. and that signal becomes the selector. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to think positive all the time. You don't have to fake a feeling. What you do need is coherence, the kind that comes when your thoughts, emotions, body, and energy are moving in the same direction. That's when your attention becomes a laser. That's when the field responds fast, not because you're pushing, but because you're clear. Coherence isn't just a concept, it's a sensation. It's that moment when you feel safe enough to let go of control, when your body softens, when your breath deepens, when your heart feels like it's no longer fighting the current, but flowing with it. That's when attention returns to the now. And the now is where all potential lives. Let me give you a moment. Close your eyes. Feel your breath. Feel where your attention naturally goes when you're not forcing it. Does it race toward what's missing? Toward what might go wrong? Or can it rest even for a second in what is? That pause, that choice, is the portal. Because when you place your attention on what is safe, what is open, what is already aligned, you begin to magnetize more of it. Not from desire, but from embodiment, from memory, from signal. Remember, the universe is not holding anything back. It's holding everything in place, waiting for your frequency to match, waiting for your attention to stabilize in the version of you who already has it, already is it, already knows it's real. And every time you interrupt the old pattern, the need to chase, to control, to overanalyze, and instead return to coherence, you collapse a new version. You realign the field. You rewire the story, not with pressure, but with presence, not with strategy, but with stillness. So again, where is your attention now? There's a truth we often avoid because it's too simple, too radical, too intimate to fully accept. What you consistently give your attention to becomes your identity, not just your experience, but your identity. And identity is the most magnetic force in the quantum field. If your attention keeps orbiting lack, you become the one who lacks. If your attention keeps looping around disappointment, you become the one who's always let down. If your attention keeps scanning for signs of abandonment, rejection, failure, you become the one who expects it, who prepares for it, who unconsciously creates it. And this isn't punishment, it's physics, it's vibrational law, it's the field saying yes. Yes to what you're most attuned to. Yes to what you embody most often. Yes to the frequencies you carry like skin. Because manifestation doesn't start with what you want. It starts with what you are safe to receive. And the version of you who is safe to receive the love, the abundance, the freedom, is not the one who's waiting. It's the one whose attention is no longer fragmented by fear. So we must become intimate with our attention, not manage it, meet it, listen to it, observe it without judgment, because your attention will show you exactly where your energy lives. It will reveal the old agreements you're still unconsciously upholding, like, I have to control to be safe, I have to monitor to not be abandoned, I have to struggle to be worthy. And every one of those stories is encoded in where you place your awareness. But here's the power. Awareness itself dissolves them. When you can sit in the discomfort of watching your attention reach for lack without indulging it, when you can witness the grasping without identifying with it, something opens, something rewires, you reclaim choice, and in that space the field shifts. You become the observer again, not the reactor, not the chaser, not the manager, but the creator. That's why true manifestation begins not with doing more, but with remembering deeper, remembering who you were before the patterns, before the fear, before the need to prove or perform, because that version of you still exists in the field, intact, radiant, waiting, and the bridge to her is your attention. The more you attune to her, to the version of you who walks through life trusting timing, relaxing into her body, magnetizing through frequency, not force, the more real she becomes. You start collapsing realities where her life is already happening. You start living into timelines that match her safety, her rhythm, her knowing. This is what quantum embodiment means. Not just thinking new thoughts, being a new signal, not just visualizing the outcome. Feeling like the one who has nothing to prove, not just asking the universe, becoming the answer. And the path back to that, it's breath by breath, choice by choice, moment by moment, bringing your attention back to coherence, back to presence, back to self, not from pressure, from devotion, not from fear, from remembrance, not to fix who you are, but to finally feel who you've always been. So here's the paradox. The more urgently you seek to manifest, the more you amplify the energy of not having. The more you reach, the more you signal separation. and your attention, loyal as ever, follows the sensation of lack. It circles the absence like a hawk, waiting for a sign, waiting for relief, waiting for permission to feel whole. But that kind of waiting is not passive. It's active interference. It distorts your field. It says to the quantum, I don't trust this yet. I'm still preparing for disappointment. And the quantum listens. It listens with exquisite precision. It doesn't give you what you wish. It gives you what your frequency confirms. This is why so many people feel exhausted on the path of manifestation, because they're managing vibration instead of embodying truth. They're chasing feelings instead of becoming the signal. They're trying to control timing instead of becoming timeless. But what if you could shift that? What if instead of asking, when will it come, you began to ask, what timeline am I feeding right now with my attention? Because that's the question that brings power back to the present. That's the question that dissolves the illusion of delay. Let's ground it in something real. You're waiting for a message. Your phone is quiet. Minutes stretch into hours. And your mind starts whispering stories. Maybe they lost interest, maybe I said too much, maybe I was too open. Notice where your attention goes, not to love, not to truth, but to fear, to control, to defense. And your body follows, a tightness in the chest, a shallowness in breath, a bracing for impact. In that moment, you've collapsed a timeline, one where you're not chosen, one where love is delayed, one where abandonment is expected. And without knowing it, your frequency begins to stabilize in that reality, not because it's what you want, but because it's where your attention lingers. Now imagine the same moment, but different attention. The message hasn't come, and yet your body stays open. Your breath stays soft. Your awareness moves inward, not outward. You remember who you are, not because of what's said or unsaid, but because of the frequency you carry. You return to the version of you who is already held, already chosen, already whole. And from that place, your attention no longer feeds fear. It feeds coherence. It becomes an invitation, not a demand. It tells the field, I'm not waiting, I'm resonating. And that changes everything. Because when your attention becomes rooted in safety, the timelines of fear begin to collapse on their own. They can't sustain themselves without your energy. They dissolve like fog when the sun rises. And in their place, new paths appear. Paths where your essence leads, where your presence magnetizes, where your nervous system becomes the oracle, not the obstacle. That's the alchemy of attention. It's not about fixing thoughts. It's about shifting states. It's about choosing, moment by moment, what version of reality your body is preparing for. And the body always tells the truth. You can't fake safety. You can't fake trust. But you can cultivate them. You can regulate into them. You can remember them. Because they're not foreign, they're native. They've just been buried under layers of hypervigilance. So ask yourself again, with tenderness, not judgment, where is my attention right now? And more importantly, what reality is it rehearsing? There's a sacred shift that begins when you stop trying to think your way into alignment and start feeling your way into coherence. When you stop asking, how do I get what I want, and begin asking, how do I become a safe space for what I desire to land? Because the truth is, your desires aren't waiting for permission. They're waiting for resonance. They're orbiting you like satellites just out of reach until your field stabilizes in the version of you that can hold them without grasping, without shrinking, without fear. And that version of you, the one who already lives inside the timeline of ease, of flow, of fullness, isn't hustling to get there. She's not obsessing over how or when. She's simply being the signal, being the embodiment, being the space. So how do you become her? You begin by honoring your attention like breath, not just something you use, but something that uses you to select reality. You begin noticing the moments when your attention is hijacked by the old frequency, the one that tells you nothing's happening, or worse, that something's wrong. And instead of following it, you pause, you return, you choose again. This is not force. It's not performance. It's not pretending you feel okay when you don't. It's about slowing down long enough to feel where your attention wants to go when you're afraid, when you're triggered, when you're doubting, and gently, kindly leading it home. Back to truth, back to now, back to safety. Because attention follows safety. And when your system is dysregulated, when your nervous system is scanning for danger, for delay, for disappointment, your attention becomes erratic. It can't stabilize in the timeline you want. It keeps pulling you into loops that feel familiar, even if they're painful. But when you regulate, when you breathe deeper, Soften your body. Ground into your senses. You become magnetic, not because you're forcing frequency, but because you're creating coherence, and coherence collapses reality faster than effort ever could. Let's go deeper. Think of your attention like a tuning fork. Whatever it rests on, it begins to harmonize with. If you keep placing your attention on not having, your entire field starts to vibrate with absence. But if you shift it, even gently, to gratitude, to presence, to beauty in the now, the signal changes, the song changes, the timeline changes. That doesn't mean you'll never feel fear again. It means fear stops deciding where your attention goes. It means you stop building altars to what you don't want. It means your sacred energy stops rehearsing realities that aren't true anymore. You begin to move from a different place, not from scarcity, but from sufficiency. Not from control, but from clarity. Not from panic, but from presence. And presence is the most fertile ground for miracles. It's the space where all timelines are accessible. It's where the version of you who has it, is it, embodies it, already lives. Not in the future, but here, now, just outside the noise. So when the thoughts come, the doubts, the impulses, the urges to check, fix, push, don't make them wrong. Just notice where they want to take your attention. And ask, do I want to keep feeding that version? Or am I ready to collapse a different one? You don't need to fight the old reality. You just need to stop energizing it. That's the power. That's the shift. That's the beginning. There comes a moment, subtle, sacred, when you stop searching for signs outside of you and start reading the field within. When you no longer ask, is it happening? But instead, feel the answer in your own nervous system, not as logic, as knowing, as vibration. Because manifestation isn't a question of deserving. It's a question of coherence, and coherence is a full-body frequency. It's the way your breath moves, the way your shoulders rest, the way your thoughts pass like clouds instead of storms. It's the quiet steadiness of becoming the one who no longer grasps, because she's already tuned to the timeline she once begged for. And it all begins with where your attention lands when nothing's happening, not when you're meditating, not when you're scripting, but when you're alone, uncertain, in between. That liminal space is where most people leak their frequency. It's where doubt seduces the mind into control, into questions that drain your magnetism. What if it doesn't happen? Did I mess it up? Should I try harder? But in truth, the only question that matters is this: who am I being while I wait? Because the version of you who is in resonance with her desires is not waiting at all. She is preparing, stabilizing, embodying, becoming a vibrational match so precise that the field can't help but respond. This is where identity meets frequency. You don't manifest from the identity of the seeker. You manifest from the identity of the one who already lives inside the outcome. And every time you choose to anchor your attention in that version, in her rhythm, her breath, her certainty, you collapse timelines. You send a ripple through the field that says, this is who I am now. This is where I live. This is real for me. And the universe responds, not with sudden explosions, but with subtle alignments, gentle nods, quiet confirmations that the shift is real, that the new reality is landing, that you no longer need to chase what was always trying to find you. But it cannot find you in fear. It cannot find you in desperation. It cannot find you in the identity of the one who's still waiting for a sign. It finds you when your attention rests in presence, when your energy stops oscillating between belief and doubt, when your body feels safe enough to receive instead of reach. And here's the grace. This is not about perfection. It's about pattern. You don't need to stay in coherence every second. You just need to return to it more often, to remember the signal, to reset the field, with a breath, a choice, a whisper of attention that says, I am already here, because you are. The version of you who has the love, the abundance, the peace, she's not distant, she's dormant, waiting for your attention to awaken her, not with force, with frequency. So in the next moment of silence, or fear, or uncertainty, pause, come back to your breath, back to your body, back to your now, and remember, the field is always listening, your attention is always creating. Hand you just as you are, hold the power to collapse the timeline you've been praying for, simply by becoming its frequency. There's a rhythm beneath manifestation that no technique can replicate, a pulse, a tempo, a sacred unfolding that doesn't respond to pressure, only to presence. And when your attention syncs with that rhythm, when it stops rushing, stops scanning, stops grasping, you enter the quantum current, the place where life moves through you, not around you. That's when timelines collapse, not because you force them, but because you match them. But here's the key most overlook. It's not about visualizing harder. It's not about repeating affirmations until your voice cracks. It's about training your attention to rest, to trust, to stabilize in safety long enough for a new version of you to emerge. Because your attention is a sculptor. It carves identity. It shapes possibility. And most of the time it's carving the familiar, not because it's true, but because it's safe. Even if that safety is rooted in scarcity, you've been taught to watch for what's missing, to anticipate rejection, to prepare for delay, and so your attention becomes hyper-vigilant, constantly rehearsing the worst just to feel in control. But that's not control, that's survival, and survival doesn't create miracles, it just repeats patterns. So how do we break the loop? We begin to notice the micro moments. The instant your mind races to what if, you pause, you exhale, you soften. You tell your body, we're safe now. Not because the outer has changed, but because the inner has remembered. That's when the nervous system begins to recalibrate. That's when your signal becomes clean. That's when your attention stops outsourcing power and starts reclaiming it. And it's not loud. It's not flashy. It's subtle. It's sacred. It's the choice to see a delay and not make it mean rejection. To witness silence and not interpret it as abandonment. To feel uncertainty and not collapse into fear, because in that space, you remain available to higher timelines. You don't shut the door with conclusions. You don't close your heart with assumptions. You stay open, soft, aligned, and the universe can meet you there. Because manifestation is not about calling things in with effort. It's about clearing what blocks your natural signal. It's about dissolving the interference, the old stories, the fear-laced conclusions. When those fall away, what's left is resonance. And resonance doesn't need to chase. It doesn't need to prove. It simply attracts what belongs. Naturally, inevitably. So if you find yourself trying to figure it out, trying to force a timeline to arrive, come back to the truth. Where your attention goes, your field flows. And your field is what the quantum listens to. This is the real shift. You stop trying to make the outcome happen and you start becoming the one it's already happening to, not in the future, but now. In the breath, in the body, in the moment where you remember, you are not separate from your desires. You are their signal, their path, their embodiment. So again, not with control, but with coherence. Not from seeking, but from seeing who you already are. Here's what no one tells you. The moment you stop needing it to happen is often the moment it begins to move. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped collapsing lack with your attention. You stopped tightening the channel with your fear. You stopped vibrating with the story that it's not here yet. And in that quiet release, something opens. Not outside of you, within. Because surrender is not the absence of desire. It's the presence of trust. And trust is the ultimate signal. It tells the field, I'm no longer chasing alignment. I am it. This is where manifestation becomes embodiment. Not something you do, something you are. The softness in your breath when you stop bracing for disappointment. The steadiness in your gaze when you're no longer searching for signs to validate your worth. The silence in your mind when the old urgency dissolves. These are not small shifts. They are quantum pivots. Each one collapses a reality where you were still trying to earn what you were born to receive. Each one breaks the loop of proving, performing, pushing. Each one restores your attention to its sacred power, to choose. And choice is everything. Not the choice of what you want, the choice of who you're being now, because who you are being is what the universe responds to. So be the one who no longer begs energy to return. Be the one who knows they are already held. Be the one whose attention no longer bends toward fear, but stands rooted in the truth. I am the field. I am the observer. I am the frequency that forms. Let the external delay mean nothing about your worth. Let the unanswered questions become portals, not prisons. Let the silence be sacred, because when your attention becomes still, the signal becomes loud. You start walking differently, speaking differently, listening to life with a deeper ear. You stop scanning for validation and start emanating vibration, and the field listens. And suddenly the things you once begged for show up like old friends, not with fireworks, but with familiarity, not with force, but with ease. Not because you finally did enough, but because you finally became the one who didn't need to do anything at all. So take a breath. Place your attention on the version of you who is already living it. Feel her, see her, know her, and let your body become the receiver. Not with urgency, but with awe. Not from longing, from landing. Because reality is listening, and your attention is the invitation.